And hello. Welcome to another episode of AWS on Stack Overflow. This is normally the time slot for CQ, the certification quiz show, but we're not having one this week. We'll be back again next week at this time doing another episode of CQ. Fans might have seen us doing CQ on the Howdy Partner show from last week, so that was a bit of a change we had. We were invited on that show. So welcome. I shall entertain you with a bit of Stack Overflow today. Happy to work in with lots of you, try to answer questions, get to meet some of you out there. So hello, Mr. Bob. Glad to know you're watching here. Who else is out there? Where are you watching from? I'm streaming from Sydney, Australia, where it's a reasonable winter's day out here. Not enjoying the cold weather we're having in Sydney these days. So what is this show? This show is about answering some Argentina contrary. Oh, fantastic. Oh, haven't had an Argentinian on my show before. Great. Seattle, nice and warm in Seattle. Fantastic. I've been hearing about some of the things going on in Portland, but not going to touch that. Dallas, fantastic. Evening in Dallas. I was in Dallas last year. It was quite fun. So what are we doing? We're here trying to answer some questions on Stack Overflow, talk about AWS, get to have a general chit chat with each other and see what we can do. So I thought I'd start with the Hyderabad. Hello, India. So we're going from Argentina to India. Let's have a quick look at how that would work. Argentina, sorry, to India. How far away is that? Argentina is there, and India is way up there. Not quite opposite sides of the world. Antipoda. One of my favorite websites is this thing here, Antipoda, to see what's on the opposite side of the Earth. And how do I get to that site? Oh, they've renamed it. Other side of the globe. Monterrey, Mexico. Fantastic. Let's have a look here. Let's do Hyderabad and see what's on the other side of the world from Hyderabad. Yes, it's pretty much the other side of the world. So coming to you from all corners of the world. If you're a Flat Earth Society, all corners, otherwise not. Oh, and we're jumping straight into this. Sion West is saying, I've had a question for a week or so. Can you answer it if possible? So, from Arizona, fantastic. So, let's jump straight into this. Now, I don't know what this is about. Ooh, a very pretty formatted question. Let's see if our viewers can answer this one. DynamoDB capacity units. I have a table in DynamoDB that has a provisioned capacity for both read and write of 2. So for those of you who don't use DynamoDB much, you can use capacity units, which says guaranteed how often you can read and write from that table. Autoscaling is not enabled, and my queries are eventually consistent. So eventually consistent means when you do a read, it might be slightly out of date, but you get twice as the throughput to having a fully consistent one. I can sit and loop over an API call 1,000 times using Postman, with each call returning 1,500 items in each API call. The total query size of 268K. I think the max size of an item is 400K, so that's all right. DynamoDB tells me it consumes 45 capacity units in the query. When I look at X-ray over a 5-minute period, I can average 86 DynamoDB queries per minute at that many milliseconds on average. I'm confused as to why I can make this many requests. You can read that okay? Bump it up in size a bit. Confused why I can make this many requests for the number of records and size of records at just 2. This test ran for 10 minutes. So you're not complaining about the time. You seem to be happy about the time. Is that right, Sion? I can look at the DynamoDB metric. Dynamo doesn't let you burst for a while. That's it, Mr. Bob. DynamoDB has a burst capacity that lets you temporarily get more. Let's have a look at that. Oh, by the way, if you are into DynamoDB, I highly recommend dynamodbguide.com. This is written by a community hero. At least they became a community hero after they wrote this guide. And I think they've also got a book out, and it tells you all about different things on DynamoDB. So really good. I can't see scaling secondary indexes. Oh, okay. Let's have a look here. DynamoDB Burst. Maybe they're just giving you more than what is documented. Burst is 5 minutes, I believe, and I've run it for 10 minutes plus at the same capacity. We're all going to learn something from this. Burst. If your application performs at reads or writes at a higher rate than your table can support, we can throttle you, like Homer Simpson. When DynamoDB throttles a read or write, it returns provision throughput exceeded exception, which is also the longest error message on AWS, maybe. The application can then take appropriate action. Burst. You can use burst capacity to accommodate reads or writes in excess of the table's throughput settings. With burst capacity, unexpected read or write requests can succeed where they would otherwise fail. You're right, and it's up to 5 minutes of unused read and write capacity. They can be quickly consumed even faster. So, okay, so it's the old trade-off between cost to get your capacity units, auto scaling, which might not scale in time, but burst capacity sort of makes up for it. So let's go back to the question and see what you're saying. We have some bursts. We have a consistent performance. You are going over the limit. It will store up to 5 minutes capacity. I'd assume it would deplete that 5 minutes worth in just a few queries. So the real question is, how much does it store? You say it stores 5 minutes worth of unused read capacity. So that would suggest 300 seconds times the read capacity unit. Read capacity unit is defined as each call up to 4K in size, 1 strongly consistent read, or 2 eventually consistent reads. So in theory, if you have stored up 300 seconds worth of capacity, that would give you 2 reads per second. That could be 600 reads that you could burst very quickly. So it might be you consume 45 units per query. Because they're really big things. So 45 units by 600 would only give you less. I don't know. You've clearly done a lot of testing there, and without reproducing your tests, I couldn't say for more why that is. But if you're getting good capacity for a longer time period, don't know. If anyone knows, put a message in the chat. But I'm at least going to upvote you because, as this says, your question shows research effort is clear, useful, and clear. So it'd be interesting how long you could run before you are throttled. Yeah. No, good one. We'll see if anyone can answer that. And you asked that one a week ago and no one came up with an answer. So I'll just say here for future comments. Burst capacity. Using burst capacity. Using burst. This isn't for you, Sion. It's just for future people to read this. Might be using a burst capacity. Capacity. So Don't know. So Dynamodb on demand, how does that work? It automatically scales, doesn't it? On demand, flexible billing option. When did this come out? 2018. Capable of serving requests, and you only, if you don't have read-write traffic to a table using on-demand mode and its indexes, you only pay for the data storage. So that means when it's not being used, it's an excellent value, but presumably it costs more. Let's have a look at the pricing. So normally a provisioned capacity mode costs a fraction of a thing per read capacity unit, so keep that in mind. We'll whack that up. And we look at on-demand capacity mode, costs 0.25 per million read request units. So you get charged effectively for what you consume as opposed to being provisioned. Trying to build a budget based on project throughput. So the good thing about provision capacity is you know what you're going to pay. The bad news is you're paying it when it's not being used, and you might be throttled when it gets too much. On demand is more expensive than provision. It would depend on your usage. So if that's 25 cents per million units, if this was consumed continuously, that's saying for 1 million of them, it would be $130 compared to 25 cents, but it really depends how much you use over time. Maybe switch to it for a while and see how things vary, because I love that if you have an app that isn't used much, then you're not paying for anything. Interesting. Take a look at what did we just say it was? Provision on demand. Might be more expensive. I presume that if you have a consistent using application, provision will be much better price, but if you have a lot of variable loads, on demand would be the case. Yeah, try it for dev test and see how it runs, and let us know how that turns out. Feel free to add some details to your question there. Excellent. Oh, what have I got here? The Stack Overflow survey. Just thought I'd bring this up. Who uses Stack Overflow? A lot of people in. We have the United States on today. We have some South America not showing up at the top. Australia features high. Australia is a very good country for adoption of technology. We're sort of closely tied to Europe and America, but far away enough. And we love adopting new technologies. So I see lots of Teslas driving around. I can't justify it with the current Australian dollar. I've got a friend who has a Tesla, and he says he cannot justify the car on environmental basis. It is not cheaper, but it's a lovely car to drive. Okay, let's hop in. We've already warmed up. That's really good. If you see my screen at times, you might see little labels lit up here in red. And this is my way of saying this thing is not well tagged. In fact, the Lambda tag specifically says, do not use for the AWS service. So I have a little script that not only highlights it, but automatically corrects it for me. So I can go into this question, and you can see the Lambda tag there. But if I refresh my screen, it has already updated it to the AWS Lambda tag. So I do a bit of gardening to clean up Stack Overflow here. Is this something I can help with? Access denied for signed URL Python using CloudFront. So signed URLs, we love signed URLs. They are giving you temporary access to a private S3 object, which is great for an application to, let's say you've got a photo sharing website, your photo sharing app can temporarily provide access to your private picture in a web browser. But they're doing some strange stuff here. They're putting a key in. Their key would not be a PEM, or is the key for CloudFront sign URLs a PEM file as opposed to a normally in S3 you just use your secret key to sign, but I guess in CloudFront you have to use a whole PEM. That's sounding a bit strange. Let's have a look. CloudFront pre-signed URL. CloudFront, you can do private content two ways. You can use a pre-signed URL, or you can create a cookie, which will grant access without having to always generate a pre-signed URL. Anyone ever created a CloudFront pre-signed URL? Creating a signed URL. Look, they duplicated 2 lines. I will report that to the feedback. The dear folks in documentation always love it when you give them a bit of feedback. Because, oh no, I got it. No, I'm wrong. One says custom, one says canned. I'm not going to give them feedback. I think the root user needs to create CloudFront keys. Let's see. We generated key pair ID. So that suggests using a key pair to sign it. The signature, creating a signature. Oh my, this is getting complex. Use a hash function to sign it. For the private key, you're right. So it actually uses a private RSA key as opposed to S3 that uses a secret key. So it looks like what they're doing is quite legitimate. When I test the file on Lambda, I'm able to produce and print a URL, but when I access the URL, I get access denied. I'm not sure what I'm doing wrong. I can help you with S3 URLs, but can't help you with CloudFront. One is custom, one is canned. Thanks. Is Cole Colorado? Lewis, is that what Cole means? Where is Cole? You're in a swimming pool in Sydney. That's fantastic. Mexico. Oh, Colombia. We have a lot of South Americans that man. Time in Argentina. It is for me 10 a.m. For you it's 9 p.m. Thank you for spending your evening entertainment with me. I was looking at some of these questions on the way into the office, and I bookmarked a few of them to look at. Let's have a look. SQS. We all love SQS. So, using SQS and a dead letter queue. And Lambda, why do messages remain in flight for 5 minutes after Lambda fails with a runtime exception? Bermuda. People actually live in Bermuda. I thought it's always just the lovely place that people talk about hopefully going to. Whereabouts are you, Schwoodley? Where can I find you here? Let's go to the satellite view. Wow. Let's zoom in on Swoodley. We'll get back to SQS in a moment. Wow, look at that. You have street view. Street view. Yes. Let's visit downtown. Warwick. Warwick. Oh, this looks lovely. That's lovely. Let's find where Warwick is. Ooh, the nice part of town, hey? Near the golf course. Let's drop in on your home. I'm going to presume you live here. Oh, they're nice. Oh, I love those painted houses. That's fantastic. Look at this tunnel. Look at this tunnel. Do you know this house? Oh, that's fantastic. The beaches are good. The beaches. Let's have a look at the beaches. I only think of Bermuda when I think of the Beach Boys song. There's a nice beach around here. Cliffside Beach. Dropping around there. Fantastic. Oh, almost as good as Sydney beaches. Look at that. Excellent. Well, thanks for joining the show, Shortly. That's I almost need to pin places on the wall of where everyone is coming from. Okay, SQS. Messages remain in flight. After Lambda fails with a runtime exception. Oh, that's interesting. So they've got their queue, they've got a dead letter queue, they've got the Lambda retry set to 0. Didn't know you can set that. Timeout 30 seconds. If for some reason, expect, perhaps because of lack of understanding, that upon my Lambda failing the dead letter queue to receive the message shortly after failure, instead of minutes after. Okay. How can I ensure the dead letter queue gets the message in the fastest way so that anything responding to the dead letter queue doesn't wait minutes unnecessarily? I'm intentionally throwing a runtime error to test this so I can understand how it works. My goal is to ensure the messages go to the dead letter queue as fast as possible. So, when you create a queue, have you noticed the SQS console has been updated lately? If I go and create a queue, it's looking a bit different, more modern here. And when I create a queue, I can say message, no, not delay, re-delivery. What am I looking for here? I'm looking for the retry. Here it is. Dead letter queue. If we say it's enabled, we can then say which queue to go to and the maximum number of retries, which will be how many times Lambda tries to process the message until the message is sent to the dead letter queue. Actually, it's not Lambda that sends it to the dead letter queue. It will be SQS that sends it to the dead letter queue. So if the message is received more than X times, then it would go to the dead letter queue. So let's give this a go. I'm going to call this my, who's the person asking the question here? It is J Booker. This is going to be my Booker queue. Let's make it a standard queue. And no, we'll create the dead letter queue first. DLQ. And I'll just say create. Beautiful. Let's create a Booker queue. And we'll configure that to use a dead letter queue after, let's say, 1 retry. And put it to the DLQ. And then we want to have a Lambda function that fails. I've never intentionally written one here. What does he say? I'm intentionally throwing an exception. So if we were to create an exceptional function, I like Python. I don't think I need any roles, but I'm going to use one. Okay, what's the best way to throw an exception in Python, folks? Intentionally error. But let's print the event to the log and then raise. It's rare that I actually intentionally raise an error in Python. Just raise. Do I just raise? Calculate 1 divided by 0. Oh, okay. Silly equals 1 divided by 0. Excellent. Save that. We'll create a test. And we shall test it. And it says invalid syntax. Runtime error. shouldn't give invalid syntax. It should just say that silly equals. What am I doing wrong there? Well, it doesn't matter. It raises an error. It would be invalid syntax. Yeah. Division by 0. That's much better. Put spaces between your characters there. Okay, so we have an invalid, and now let's attach this queue, this trigger to an SQS queue, and the SQS queue is the Booker queue, and it's enabled. So theoretically, we can just, oh, it is different. We can send a message to the Booker queue. Message 1, send the message. It probably processed it already. We go to Lambda and look at the logs. We should see lots of errors in these. Yeah. Not quick enough. CloudWatch logs, let's clear them out. Send another message. This is exciting. I haven't done this before. Send a message. Message 2. Go to CloudWatch logs. See if we have a log. Excellent. It should print the message from the event. So we should see something called message 2. Very good. So it successfully received the message in there. It then did the division by 0. And now if we go to SQS, have a look at the queues, we have 2 messages available in the dead letter queue. It worked. So the only question then is how quickly did it come through? Let's delete the queue. Let's purge the queue. Yay, things. It's nice to occasionally have things work, isn't it? Thanks. Hey, John, Canada. We've got Canada in here now. I presume that is the John that I know. So we've got Canada, Argentina, Mexico, India. Fantastic. Okay, let's give it a try. I'm going to send a message here, and we'll see how quickly it goes into the dead letter queue. Message 3, done. Use. It's in flight. Refresh the page. Oh, it's still in flight. Who's timing this? Ooh, sort of right. So we set it to have a 1 failure. Go back to the logs. And so we saw it fail here for the second time. That was around about 24 seconds past. Okay, so what do you think? That took maybe a minute to get that message going in there. So back to the question. Timeout set to 30 seconds, that doesn't matter. Upon my Lambda failing, the dead letter queue should receive it. Yep. Instead of minutes later. How exactly can I ensure the dead letter queue gets the message in the fastest way possible so that anything responding to the dead letter queue isn't unnecessary? So what I suspect is, does Lambda retry if the function fails? We can almost see that by seeing how many times it was in the queue, but I think it was only in the queue once. This is the message 2, and this is the message 3. So Lambda only ran once. It is not retrying the Lambda function. Let's see if we can figure out timing here. So it failed at 31:24. So the idea is if the Lambda function fails, the message goes, yeah, so the whole idea with the dead letter queue, just to clarify that for you, Contre, is you can say after a certain number of receives, it should go. So let's follow SQS. Somebody sends a message to SQS, it sits in the queue waiting. Somebody or an app can then poll SQS, retrieve the message. When a message is retrieved, the message is made invisible so that another process doesn't grab it, but is not yet deleted from the queue in case something goes wrong. That's also known as in-flight. Then when, that's this in-flight column here, then when something has successfully processed the message, it calls a delete message, passing back a handler that was given with the message receive, and the message is then deleted and gone forever. If the process processing the SQS message does not do it within a sufficient time, receive message, no, which is default visibility timeout. This thing here, you can set it. So by default, if it doesn't respond within 30 seconds, it will assume that the process that is handling the message failed, and it will put the message back on the queue. However, if that process fails continuously, then you'll have an infinite loop of things not going right. So you can then define a dead letter queue, which says after a certain number of retries, if it fails, move it off into a second queue, and we'll either look at it manually to figure out what's going wrong, or we might have another process that grabs it and maybe tries it again, maybe 10 minutes later. And that's what it is. So it looks like this went into it failed at 10:31:24 Sydney time. Let's now try and see if we can see it in the dead letter queue. Send and receive messages. This whole interface has changed. Polling for message. Here we can see it was at 10:31:20 is when it was sent. And this thing was at 10:31:24. Oh, it's kept the time of the original send as opposed to the time that it was put in the queue. So basically we cannot tell when it was added to the queue. Let's give it a go. Let's have a look here. First received, 10:30, that's when the Lambda triggered. And we cannot see when it was otherwise put in the dead letter queue. Terribly sorry. Exactly. You'd usually find and fix the error, then redrive the message by triggering a process to pipe it back to the primary queue, says Weber's. Yeah. Well, I don't know if you'd always automatically process it, because if something's failed with a message, it might happen again. But if you've got something that doesn't retry too often, you can do that. It just stops things filling up your queue too much. Oh, somebody has answered. Is it somebody on the show? Marson, are you watching the show, Marson? Are you watching? Marson, who is in Perth, Western Australia, where it is currently 8:30 in the morning. Let's see. Invisibility, try reprocessing. He's saying much the same thing. Mr. Booker, hello. The original poster even replied to it. How do I set the invisibility time? The invisibility time here? The invisibility time says how long before sending it back to the queue. So I don't think that is impacting it. You can also specify the timeout when you receive the message from the queue, so you can override the default. Oh, or is it? The question here is when Lambda pulls it from the queue and the Lambda function fails, is Lambda smart enough to delete it from the queue? So if your function succeeds, Lambda will correctly delete the message off the queue. If the Lambda function fails, the question is, does it wait for the timeout setting? That is an excellent question. Let's see if we can do that. So if we modify this queue such that The invisibility is, well, let's make it 2 seconds, give it a chance to do something. Okay, so it could be that Lambda is waiting for that timeout before it moves it to the other queue. Let's reset things. Okay. Let's clear the message out of that queue. New interface, not too hard to use. Okay, let's send message 4. Delivery delay, in case you're interested, this allows you to say, please don't process this message for a bit of time. Maybe you've uploaded a file to S3 and you're sending a message to say, please process this file. You can say, hey, please wait a few seconds or a minute, up to 15 minutes to, before you process that file, which is quite handy. So sending the message to the queue. We look at the queues, refreshing my, oh, bingo, that's it. I just did a test. And you are right. A lower invisibility timeout will send the failed message to the dead letter queue very quickly. Fantastic. That's quite interesting. That was quite fun. Woohoo! Didn't get to answer it. Martin answers it, so I will give him an upvote. Let's have a look at Martin. Martin's been doing great lately, answering lots of things. If I go to the Amazon Web Services tag and have a look, Martin and Chris Williams are just incredible, powering through questions of last month. I can do about 100 answers a month, and they've just blown that out of the water. Addy, haven't seen you on for a while, Addy. Good to have you back. Get your metrics. If you answer questions, you too can be on the leaderboard for Stack Overflow. Come join us up here. It's lots of fun. Talking about coming and joining us, we have a Stack Overflow room, which you'll find in my link thing down here. And I will say, Martin, Twitch TV it is, and we saw your SQS answer. Right. Visibility timeout made it faster. So anyone can come and join us in this chat room for people enjoying AWS. Sometimes you can pop in and ask a question. Otherwise, those of us who ask questions hang out a lot in this room. Just put this in chat so you can join us if you wish. That was fun. Oops, I want to clean up. I used to have little scripts and things that would automatically clean up for me when I've finished doing things for the day. I will keep that exceptional function. I like that exceptional function. Okay, that was great. Here's something fun I found. I haven't read it yet. The most copied Stack Overflow Java code snippet contains a bug. 9 years later, developer corrects the code snippet. An academic paper identified a code snippet as the most copied Java code token from Stack Overflow and reused in open source projects. The snippet was provided an answer posted in September 2010. Let's have a look at it. Okay, some code. This was the most copied thing. It was flawed. It was fixed, but it got messy. Contains security bugs. So, have you ever seen this thing? Book Stack Overflow copy. This is a fake book, but copying and pasting from Stack Overflow, essential book. Anonymously published manual. Consider it done. It's 9 pages in length. And I wonder if we can get a copy of it. So be careful when you copy and paste from Stack Overflow, because there's actually some rules attached to the licensing. Stack Overflow license copy. According to Stack Overflow, it falls under CC by SA. What's that? Creative. You can copy it with attribution or something. But there's a lot of legal rules around that. So theoretically, if you copy your code and paste it in your own commercial code, you might be either needing to refer to those people, or you might even have to provide your code for free if it's under the GPL license. So be very careful copying and pasting code if you are doing work for a paid employer. Amazon, for example, says never copy and paste code out of Stack Overflow. You can be guided by it, and you might use the concepts used in Stack Overflow in your own code, but we are not allowed to copy and paste because it might open us to legal requirements. If I ever answer a question with lots of code, what I like to do is I put in an additional bit of text that I have created here through my little clip menu magic thing, which is in addition to the license granted under the terms of service of this site, the contents of this poster are licensed under MIT0, MIT0, which basically says do what you want. You are not responsible for doing anything. No attribution. Removes the requirement for attribution. It's the same as an MIT license consisting of a sandwich, but it is missing the middle line of the sandwich. Do what you want. I know some devs that have written entire apps based on copy and paste, says beep blam bleep. Look, real coders don't write code. They just find the right code snippets from everywhere. Like if I'm writing some CloudFormation, I don't remember how to write CloudFormation, so I just go to things like the documentation here, and I'll copy out the snippet and then adjust it accordingly. So hey. My son, who is doing computer science currently at university, has been learning Python, C, Perl, and Bash, and he's already getting confused, and I have trouble with an if statement as I jump between things. So copy paste. Next one, Python, how to catch custom exception. This is interesting. We're talking about exceptions from Boto 3. I'm launching EC2 Spot instances. So Spot instances, for those who haven't used them before, we have lots of computers in AWS. In fact, does anyone know how many machines we have in our data centers? I'll give you a few seconds to try and answer this question. How many computers does AWS have in their data centers? And not all of them are used all the time, but you folks can come along and say, oh, I need 100 machines given to me. So we've got to have them up and running, ready for you. And they're just chewing up electricity, not earning us money. So we can make them available. 5 computers, you're getting close. Is it just one big one? The correct answer for the number of computers AWS has is lots. A Trojan cause, Skynet. What is it? We are now closer to the, oh no, Skynet. We've passed the Skynet birth date, I think. Skynet from the Terminator series. Skynet. Quarter million per data center. What? That looks like a pasted on face. Oh, that's right. Skynet in that last movie became real and took on a body. Yeah, that movie wasn't that great. When does it become alive? Live. Skynet becomes alive. Oh, the second last movie. What was the Terminator was Arnie. Terminator 2 was Arnie fighting the metal thing, wasn't it? Terminator 3, was that when we had the female Terminator? Terminator Salvation was when they went back and we saw the story of John Connor. Terminator Genesis was when, that was the screwy mind one where they rebooted the whole series and all the timelines overlapped. And it's quite funny if you've seen the original ones. And Dark Fate, have I seen this one? 2019. He jumped the shark on Salvation. Salvation was back there, okay. Which was this one? Terminator Dark Fate. My wife and I have great memories of Terminator. And so when our kids, we sat them down and said, you've got to watch Terminator. And the first Terminator film is filled with violence and sex. And it's not a great thing to show your kids. Opening scene Terminator kills John Connor in the opening scene. I don't remember that. Oh, is this going against copyright doing this? I don't remember if I've seen this one. There we are. Okay. I don't know how we got on this. Dark Fate's worth watching. I will make a note of that. As if I haven't seen it, I will watch it. I'm using EC2 spot instances. So the basic thing is, if you are not a Terminator, we can give you spot instances for up to 90% off. However, if somebody comes along and wants more instances, we will grab them back from you and we will terminate them. There's a link. Your spot instance will either be terminated or you can now hibernate the instance and it can come back to life, like Terminator a bit later. I think that changed along with different versions of Boto 3. So I want to handle the error when the requested price is too low. But it's not working. So spot instance changed a while ago, and it used to be that you still do. You nominate a maximum price you're willing to pay for spot, but it used to be the spot price changed really, really often, and you'd be thrown off because you didn't bid high enough. But now the spot prices are really, really consistent, and we're quoting the typical price you'll pay. So if we look for like an M5 extra large, say, normally 22 cents an hour, you can get it for 4 cents an hour. So fantastic savings, but it might be taken away. And previously we used to raise the price, which was a way of taking back capacity. But now we just say, terribly sorry, we need them back, and we don't charge you more, but we take them back. So the price you bid doesn't necessarily determine the chance that you get to keep them. And there is some great page to view what's going on here, where it gives real-time pricing, I think. Spot instance pricing history. You can get it in the console, really. So this used to spike up and down continuously, and now you'll see it's just a pretty flat curve, and we just set the price for what it looks like in the long-term demand. So let's see. I can see the custom exception raised with a client error. It says client error is not defined. So he's basically got a Python error. Yes, you've got to import from Boto Core your exceptions if you're going to raise it. This works, but doesn't feel the right way to go. I have to import them separately. No, I think you can just import Boto Core exceptions. I can import Boto Core and then I think you can just import that one. I'm not sure. You can try that. So what does it say here? Your spot request price of 10 cents of get 10 cents, is lower than the minimum price of 27 cents. And it wouldn't let you launch. Excellent. Oh, another SQS question I found here. Why did I mark this one? How to add a permission button in Permissions tab in SQS after AWS redesigned the SQS console. AWS has redesigned the SQS console a few days or a week before. I'm not able to find the permission tab in the new version. Can anyone help me navigate it? Let's have a look. So SQS, similar to make a new queue. SQS, similar to S3 and a few other services, has its own access policy. And this allows you to say a certain set of credentials can access this SQS queue without having to do it via IAM directly. Really good for cross-account things. So an IAM entity in account A can use a queue in account B. I think you can even do it anonymously. So if you have an application on the net, it can send a message to a queue without having AWS credentials. So I haven't tried that myself. If we hit edit on this thing, we then have an access policy down here. So the question is that what they're looking for? I'm not able to find the permission tab in the new version. There used to be, I think, something to make it easier for you to add permissions to this thing, and it just created a policy for you. But it looks like that's all it does for you now. You've got to edit the policy yourself. So let's go back to this. To access the access policy. Click edit. Or does the policy gen work for that? There is a little website called Policy Generator, which doesn't require you to be logged into anything, and it allows you to create an SQS queue policy. So let's say that. Woohoo! I think it changed along with different versions of Boto 3, not sure there. Excellent. I can get rid of my queue again. In fact, I don't need to get rid of my queue again because I'll show you something magical. So here I have my stack queue. If I go to my console thing here and update my security policy and log into a Linux instance I have a whole lot of scripts that I wrote back in 2016. This is using Boto rather than Boto 3. And in this thing, I have a cleanup thing that does, I think, SQS. If I give that a run, it deletes any SQS queues I've got, and I can come over here and just refresh. And the queue is gone. So after I used to teach a class every day, it would automatically clean up things for me. Looks like when first creating the queue in the new console, it has a wizard that lets you add other accounts. Oh, it is still in there, is it? I spoke too soon. Let's try that. Thank you very much. Werberaz. Okay, so yes, you can say only allow the queue owner or allow other ones, and you can put something in here and it looks like it goes into the queue there. Oh, that's a good way of doing it. Or you can just go advanced and do that. That's excellent. Werberaz. Do you want to add a comment to that question since I slightly got it wrong there? Oops. Link here. in the chat. If you've never added a comment to to a Stack Overflow question, now is your chance. Add it in there. We're watching. We're waiting for you to do it. We'll come back and see if you did it later. Excellent. Now, this one I brought up just simply because it's an example of not a great question. You can tell what a not great question is by it being very short. I made a parse server using AWS. When I upload our image file is shown in parse dashboard, but I can't download the image even when I manually upload our image. Help me out. So I'm not dissing people's language, but the main thing is the ability to explain what's going on and how we can help people. And whenever I see something lacking a bit of information, I do two things. I give it a needs details or clarity close message. If 3 people vote for whatever reason, the question will be closed until they update their question and it becomes reopened. It used to be 5 people, but a while back they changed it to 3, so things get closed down a lot faster. And then I also put a helpful message on here saying, hey, have a look at this page. Here's how to ask a good question, write a good title, pretend you're talking to a busy colleague, introduce the problem with some code, proofread, etc. So little tips on how to improve it. Also, once you get high enough in doing Stack Overflow stuff, you get this little thing. This is where you can help as a community to participate in improving the quality of questions that are out there. So I have closed this thing here, and once people start closing things, it goes into a queue here where people can say, hey, here's some questions that have been flagged for closure. Do you think they should be closed? So this one says needs a bit of clarity. I don't know, so I'm going to skip that one. And it's quite okay to skip questions here if they're not your expertise. I'm just trying to look for one that should be closed off. Okay, so here's a simple one. I've been trying to fetch data. Okay, they haven't provided enough information there, so I'm going to say, yeah, I think it should be closed. I'll vote for that as well. So that's a way of hastening the closure rate of questions out there. So that's the close queue. Once people edit their question and provide more information, if the question was closed, it can then be marked to reopen. So if we have a look at this question here, the question is not reproducible, is not currently accepting answers. The person has come along and has edited their question. So we can see they took out code. Anyway, they did some editing and then they're trying to say, should it be reopened given the information they've got? So I could vote and say whether, oops, didn't want to get rid of that one. Should it be reopened or not? What else do we have here? Low quality posts. Low quality. Okay. Oh, that's an answer. Okay, it's not too bad. If we look at the question that this is based on, somebody's asking, how do I do blah, blah, blah? And somebody's come along and posted and match response blah. Doesn't provide an answer to the question. Leave a comment below their post. So I can go into this low quality post and go vote to remove this answer. Never done this before, so I'll just leave it at that. And if enough people vote to delete the answer, it will be deleted. It's also worth mentioning that if you ever see an answer that you think is not very good, you can go to the bottom of the answer and hit this flag thing. And this is a way of telling the moderators something needs to be done. It's spam, please delete it. It's rude. It's not an answer. Sometimes people ask a question in the answer and it really should be a comment. So the moderators, I think, can move it to a comment. If it's low quality, it goes into that queue and gets reviewed by people, or in general, you can type a little message in there. Sometimes I see people post duplicate messages. So I send a message to the moderator saying, this is it. You have a certain number of flags that you can create each day based upon your reputation on Stack Overflow. So the more you have, the more you can do each day. And so Ware says he has updated this thing. So let's have a look at our answer. And Matthew Werber. Hi, Matthew. Looks like when first creating the queue in the new console, it has a wizard that lets you add other AWS roles. If you go into the queue, the wizard isn't there. Fantastic. Let's even supplement that because it looks quite pretty. What I'll do here is I will take a, I'm not going to take a picture of that. I'm going to hide my account number. Go back to basic. Damn. My numbers everywhere. Okay. It's not terrible to have people know your account numbers. It's just not a great thing to do. I will just cancel them out. Copy that, and I found a great way to quickly put things into a Stack Overflow thing. So I'm going to edit your question, Matthew. Oh, first of all, I should upvote you for saying thank you very much for doing that. I'm going to insert a picture, and I can paste on I will go to Imager, something like that. One thing I discovered is I can paste a picture straight in. So instead of having to save it to disk, I can directly just create it like that. Copy the image address, it'll come out like that. Fantastic. I then come into here and say SQS permissions, paste that in. It comes up lovely there, and I'll fix your capitalization, and that looks great. You don't have to do all that, just paste it into the edit box. Stack Overflow will do it for you. Oh, I love learning things here. Let me try and add another answer. You're saying if I just paste it into the edit box. So if I copy a picture, copy image, paste. It did it. Here I am showing you a shortcut that is a long cut. So it goes and creates it in Imager and probably pastes the link in there too. Thank you. Oh, stunning. Well, I can end the show today because I've learned something from everyone. Fantastic. Let's finish this off. What other cues do we have here? Suggested edits. So if you are a lowly person and you make an edit to somebody's answer, then you are not allowed to post directly. Now, it looks like somebody has come along here and said, instead of, you can read about it here and there's a link. I don't like a link. I like it being a nice readable type link here. And this person has come along and said, change it to here. I don't like that. So I can come in and I can reject an edit. And then I can read about, and what I do is I go to the page where it's got the information. I then use a handy plugin I've got, which copies the page title and the URL in one go. And this little thing is called copy title and URL as markdown style, and it's a Chrome extension. So I can then come back into here and paste it, and it does this nice little link in here. So I have improved somebody else's edit and go in there. So I have a high enough score that I can immediately edit somebody else's question. If you are too low in your score, then you will get in the suggested edits queue. People who are doing their first post, Stack Overflow likes to check that people are doing a good quality posts. So, here's not a great one. Oh, that's a first answer, right? Late answers. This is when somebody answers years afterwards. Let's have a look at the question here to find it. So somebody asked a question in August 2019. And somebody 43 minutes ago just gave an answer to it. So sometimes it's a bit suspicious when there's not a good answer. So it's come up and flagged that as a potential problem. Triage. They need help in putting things into categories. Unsalvageable. This might be when things aren't tagged correctly. And one other thing I want to point out, I showed you the Stack Overflow room that we have going in here. And hey, Marcin, you online, Marcin? If so, check. Say hi in chat. there are other rooms, and the biggest room that is on Stack Overflow is this room here. It is the Stack Overflow Close Vote Reviewers. So these people sit around at all hours of the day reviewing the close vote suggestions and helping the questions along. So if I say this thing should be closed, they might have a look at it and provide the extra votes to go and close them. And they have a nice chat on the side as they do things at the same time. So if you feel that answering questions is not your thing and you'd rather help moderate the Stack Overflow site, that room might be the one for you. Okay, we got sidetracked. I can't help with this question, so too bad. Let's talk about something else for a moment. There is a new service that came out, you might have seen, called the Amazon Interactive Video Service. Hands up, anyone who's ever used Twitch. What? All of you have used Twitch? What a coincidence. Well, guess what? IVS is white labeled Twitch. What it does is it allows you to create your own streaming service. And you send a stream, so anything that normally sends to Twitch, like OBS, you can send your stream to an AWS endpoint. We charge you based upon the number of hours that you send. So when you are sending a video for a basic, which means 480p, 20 cents an hour. For a standard, which goes up to 1080p, it's $2 an hour. So that's for sending it to AWS. Then what happens is you can create a channel. You configure permissions and a stream key on that channel so you can stream directly to it. And people can then tune in to your channel by going to a special URL, or we also give a player SDK, so you can put it in a browser page and people can tune into your stream. And for doing that, we charge you the grand price of anything from 3 cents, 3.75 cents, up to, depending where you are in the world, whoa, that hurts, 34 cents an hour. So be aware you are paying for bandwidth charges, whereas Twitch, is this public? What Twitch has been using for a while now? Yes, so this is basically the Twitch infrastructure that has ingestion points all around the world and redistribution points all around the world. You can now make your own thing, but be aware you are paying per hour. Now this is a bit confusing because this says the first 10,000 hours. I don't think it means 3 cents for 10,000 hours. I think it means 3 cents per hour for the first 10,000 hours, and then it gets slightly cheaper. So that can kill you if you have a very popular thing. But yes, you can now make your own Twitch. And it also has something called a metadata service. So as part of the stream, and I'll link you to this blog post so you can read it yourself later. So as part of the stream, you can send metadata. And this is how Twitch sends the chat that you are now reading. You can send metadata like that along with your stream. And the software running in the browser that is looking at the stream can extract the metadata and do something like provide chat. So here in this case, Martin, who wrote the blog post, included a poll, and all he did was include the metadata within the stream. And then he had some software running on the browser which looked at the metadata, and when it sees it, it put up a box in HTML on top of the stream. So imagine what you can do with this sort of thing. In fact, no need to imagine, because Amazon has a very similar service, which I believe has been using this technology. If you go to amazon.com/live, you will see the Amazon shopping channel. Amazon has a 24-hour shopping channel where you can watch people build Lego. And the cute thing here is the metadata that goes along with the stream is not chat. It is this stuff down the bottom here, which says, oh, we're currently showing this particular Lego thing. Here is the product. You can then click that and go straight to the scene. And what do you know? You can buy the product. So the Amazon shopping channel is all about going off and buying things. And it's got these, what's it wanting me to do down here? Oh, if I click that, it comes up with lots of stars, and the viewers can interact by making stars. Isn't that cute? So here is a Kid trying to make sales of his earplugs. He's missing a piece. He's missing a piece. Can't find the piece. Where is this piece? Is presumably saying. So down here you can see all the different shows that there are. And I had a look here recently. So Lego architecture building. I think that is a fantastic idea. Build Lego. Every time somebody clicks on that, he probably gets a kickback of a few cents. You can get an app. And on the app, you can control what items come up on the screen. And I'll give you an example. There's lots of fitness things on here. So let's have a look at Fitness Live. This is pre-recorded, but at certain times of day, they are they not live? Yes. Here we are. It's a fitness show, and she is selling the yoga mat, the wrist anklets things, the ball, which is standing there, headphones that let you listen to music while you're exercising, muscle things, a water bottle, a trampoline. Isn't this fantastic? So you too can build your own QVC on AWS using the interactive service, or you can join the live influencer program on Amazon, the Amazon influencer program. And the idea on this one is if you have a streaming account or a Facebook account or whatever, you can create a storefront, get rewarded, and get a kickback. Get a commission, be rewarded for your selling things on Amazon. And it also works on Amazon Live. Let's go back to that one. So Fast Unboxer is part of the Amazon Influencer program. I love the idea of streaming Lego making, but why do it on your own Twitch channel where no one's going to watch when you can do it on Amazon? And how do I do this? I don't know how to click that. How do I get the influencer link? Are you interested in live streaming? Learn how. Drive real-time sales. You get the app. So on the app, you can configure. People can watch it. They can buy things on the app. You can do it as a brand. It's fantastic. So go ahead and do it. Look forward to, maybe I should Stack Overflow on Amazon Live. What would I sell? I could sell keyboards, repetitive strain injury wrist braces, webcams. So I could do that too. What am I doing here? I could be a movie star. How to fake upload. How to fake photo upload to AWS without paying. Mouse pads. Anyway, who uses mouse pads anymore? Ever since mice went to the sort of laser thing, mouse pads aren't required because they work on your jeans, on your shirt and everything. So mouse pads are out. Mics, yeah. Apparently there is currently a worldwide shortage of webcams. Webcam shortage. Let's see if Google News knows about this. Webcams have become impossible to find. Prices are skyrocketing. I know that because I bought a webcam before everything happened, and then I tried buying one afterwards. It's much more expensive. 179% price jump. That before or after? Ooh, some of them are very expensive. So these Logitechs, I'm using one of these Logitech 922 webcams, and they're very hard to get these days. It used to be $99, and now they're in stock. You can buy them cheap. Who knows? I appreciate a good mouse mat. Mine covers half my desk. I met somebody once who was a university lecturer who he had so many papers piled up on his desk in his office, but he had to use a mouse, so he had like something the size of a mouse mat, and that was the only part of his desk that was not piled high with paper, just so he could mouse around. But so there. How to fake upload to AWS without paying for AWS. I developed an app I'd like to run on AWS, but I don't want to pay for any services while developing. AWS is not that expensive. Now I'd like to add a feature, photo upload. Is there a way I can fake photo upload? Something like a Docker image where I can use a service in my app and pretend that I'm AWS. I know I can use a free tier, And the great thing here is somebody recommended local stack. So it's worth mentioning. Local stack is good. Somebody says it does not have total AWS service coverage. That's true. Regarding the free tier, if you don't exceed the limits, you will not be charged. And S3 is so low priced. I back up all my family photos and videos to S3 and I get like $1.50 bill a month. I do it in S3 infrequent access. I don't put in Glacier because sometimes I might want to get the backups back real quick. So local stack was developed by an Australian company you might have heard called Atlassian. And it looks like Atlassian had need to test lots of things against AWS, so they developed local stack. And local stack is a mocking service for a lot of things, but I think it actually works. So it actually has an S3. So if you upload things to S3 and then ask for it back again, it really works. I wouldn't necessarily use it on a large scale. AWS does have some local services for things like Dynamodb. We have a library where you can run a local Dynamodb, but for all other things, this is local stack. So it looks like, they've now combined a single endpoint. So they have lots of different services that you can use on AWS. So if you're ever wanting to practice lots of things for AWS without actually using AWS, or you want to have automated testings without using an AWS account, which can have a lot of contention problems, have a look at local stack. And wow, they've done CloudFormation as well, which is very hard. They would have had to write the same functionality to make all of these services do what these services are doing, which is a phenomenal job. Especially if they've got, I wonder if Redshift is actually Redshift, or does it just use to provision services? Take a look at that. AWS scares him. I'm afraid I'll make a mistake and end up with a huge bill. So yeah, definitely always create a billing alarm. If I hop into my AWS account, one tip to know about creating a billing alarm is you have to do it in the US East 1 region. So if you go into here and have a look at my expenses, I turn things off when they're not being used, so my expenses aren't too high. But there should be there's budgets. Budgets are great. Budgets let you say, I'm going to, I only want to spend a certain amount of money or a certain amount of usage of a service. I want to track my reserved instances and savings plans. So you can come in here and you can say, I only want to spend for this particular thing in a particular month a fixed amount of money. It shows you how much it typically has been, and you can then say, warn me if it looks like I'm going to exceed the budget, which is really neat. So you can say, warn me at a certain percentage, warn me at 50% and 80% of the expenses. I accidentally racked up a couple of grand in 1 month, caught it early enough, they forgave me. After that became diligent. Yeah, I went to my billing console a month ago or so, and I suddenly found that I had a SageMaker thing that was running. Here it is. So I had a SageMaker thing running. I normally only spend $20 or whatever, and it was $145 that month. So it can be nasty, and so the alarms are good. So you can set a budget. You can use forecasting to see what it should be, and it will warn you if it looks like you're going to go over it. Or you can create the billing alarm. Let's see if I can. Yeah. I change this to 1 year. So you can see during this time period, I was doing some hands-on labs to do with, no, I set it running in February. I forgot about it. And I didn't realize it till April. And things then came back. Looks like my June's going to be a bit high. So definitely set some billing alarms. How do you do that? In the billing console, there should be something that mentions billing alarm. Bills, budgets, Explorer. I'll just go to CloudWatch. It's in CloudWatch. Now here's the tip of the week. You won't find billing. Here it is, billing. You will find it. And it says, please switch to North Virginia if you're going to do that. So if you switch to North Virginia, you get the billing console, and you can then create an alarm based on a metric such as by service or total estimated charge. I'm going to create one, I think. If my total estimated charge is, whoa, that's my usage throughout the month. It grows throughout the month. So if over a, if there's a daily cost, say if I have a daily cost that is above, to make it work as expected, set period to 6 hours. Okay, sorry. Maximum 6 hours charged, static threshold, let's say $40. Then, once an AI email list, create a notification thing there. I'll do that later. So you cannot be charged. No. Can you auto shut down if it exceeds your budget? No. AWS does not have the ability to automatically shut down things. I am aware of certain companies that have implemented those sort of services. There's a company that does online labs called Vicarium. And Vicarium is interesting. They are designed for, let's say, universities who want to offer their students the ability to run AWS accounts, doing programming labs, for example, and they can monitor the usage on an account and then lock the user out of the account once they consume too much money. But they've had to code that functionality themselves. It will only give an alarm. You could, of course, have the CloudWatch alarm trigger a Lambda function, and the Lambda function could then intelligently go off and maybe shut things down or change sizes of things. But AWS is really designed for large companies who are more interested in having highly reliable, available services that they do want to run, as opposed to wanting to cut things down when the money gets tight. There's a great expression I heard one time where if you get denial of service attacks, that could cause you to spend more money on AWS, and that's called a denial of finance attack. So it is possible that external people could cause your Stack Overflow bill to go up. If you subscribe to Shield Advanced, then we can insure you against those sort of things. So for a monthly fee for Shield Advanced, we will cover any extra costs you might get. I find this cast pretty amazing, says Contra. What's the schedule for this show? So I try to do it at this particular time, minus about half an hour each week, after the certification quiz show, which is on earlier in the day. We are about to start a new series every 2 weeks called Let's Code, which will actually be taking this time slot. So I'll probably alternate between doing the Stack Overflow cast and Let's Code. Let's see if I can tell you about Let's Code. Let's Code AWS. Because you can sign up for it. Developers, Let's Code. And the idea is we have a lot of people, I can't find it. We have a lot of people starting with AWS and they're developers and they want to code, write Lambda functions like this, and they don't know where to start. So we're starting a new series called Developers Let's Code. It'll be every couple of weeks on Twitch. And then we'll move weekly, and it will focus on a topic. So let's talk storage. Let's see how you do S3. Let's talk compute. Let's look at Fargate EC2. Let's talk databases. And it's for developers wanting to figure out how do I code against these services. So keep an eye on the Twitch schedule, which we sometimes update. But you can also sign up to be notified for Let's Code. I think I got it in my email. If I look for my email. Are you a developer who loves to code? This is it. Learn more and register. Excellent. This is it. You don't really have to register, but it will send you a notification whenever we go live. And so we have upcoming episodes at this time on this Twitch channel looking at storage, compute, and serverless as our first few episodes. And we'll have people such as Nick Walsh, who you might have seen on Twitch. We'll be doing some of those shows. I'll probably join in a bit of Twitch moderation going on there. So basically, he'll go on every second week. I'll go on every second week. So tune in this time on your favorite Twitch channel, and you'll get some good content going there. AWS should release a Rust SDK. You can definitely submit some requests there. How do I correctly call a Lambda function in another account from Lambda? So they've got account A, where they've got a Lambda function, it looks like. They've got something in account B, and they want to call a Lambda function in account B. How do they do it? Has somebody answered? Somebody has answered. Marcin answered 2 hours ago before, since I marked this as a potential question. And he's pointed out a few errors in there. So what you would have to do is assume a role. So account A would need to assume a role from account B. Then the role in account B that role would need permission to invoke Lambda. So the Lambda function would call assume role, get back some temporary credentials, then use those credentials to call invoke function on the Lambda in account B. I think Marcin has corrected a few things there. Does not match what you use in the principle, blah, blah. I'll just say the basic flow is account Lambda function in account A calls assume role on the role B, then uses those. Hey Jelly, good to have you around. Then uses those temporary credentials to call invoke on Lambda. So the one thing I'm confused about here, they've got a Lambda role in account A, which has permission to invoke function, which is totally irrelevant because you actually have to call invoke function on the returned credentials from account B. So Lambda A does not actually need permission to call account B because it uses the returned credentials. So there, love all of those cross-account fun things. Very good. So what you been up to lately, Jelly? Answering lots of questions. Let's have a quick look on the top users down here. Jelly, you've got a bit of work to do to catch up to Marcin and co. Answer more questions, come on. Addy hasn't been around for a while. Addy is from Pakistan. So we have a real multicultural cast on Stack Overflow. Let's have a look at a few questions I've answered before and people come back. Marcin in chat. Oh, the nice thing is if you chat in the Stack Overflow room that I linked, which is this room here, and somebody makes a mention of you. So here Marcin made a mention of me, then I actually got that notification in my Stack Overflow inbox. So if you hang around a Stack Overflow a lot, great for notifying you. Somebody says, am I participating in the elections? Stack Overflow has elections to nominate moderators. And some people enjoy that type of thing. I just like answering questions. I don't need to moderate anything. Somebody had a question back here in March. And only append or modify an object. One option is to use Stack. That's from 2019. I don't need to pay attention to that. I don't need this picture anymore. Actually, now I know I can just paste in. Okay, what happened to my, did I just lose my, just lost my web browser. Okay. What else is there fun to talk about? I did my security exam last week. 65 questions, 170 minutes. I didn't use all the time and I passed. I did it from at home, and I had to take pictures of my exam room and people monitored me as I did it. I was in a freezing cold room. I set the air conditioning on, but the air conditioning turned off and I got freezing. Anyway, I passed my security exam and I learned a few things. And one of the things I learned was about KMS, and this was really interesting. So I thought I'd share this tidbit of knowledge. In S3, you can store unencrypted. You can store with server-side encryption. Thanks, Jelly. You can store encrypted with KMS, or you can do customer-side encryption, which means the customer provides an encryption key, it gets encrypted and stored, and the encryption key is thrown away. And to be able to read that, you have to provide the encryption key again. And I found a very interesting fact, which was you could create an object in S3 and let's create a bucket here. And I can upload a picture into this bucket. Upload a picture of an elephant. Fantastic. I use this elephant to test recognition to see if it works. And if I make, I've got to change my permissions to allow things to become public. Block S3 public access. Make sure you don't accidentally make things public. So I go here and I make this object public. And if I use the link, I get my pictures of the elephant. So great. So here I have made a public object publicly accessible. Let's now try the same thing, but I'm going to upload it and use a KMS key. So not everyone always has permission to use KMS keys. So if I create a symmetric key, stack key, and I can use it on my computer and for my login, I can administrator it and okay, so hopefully that's good enough. If I now upload another picture, a genius bar picture, but let's see if I can do this. Can I choose a KMS key? Encryption. I'm going to choose a KMS key. I'm going to choose the key that I just created and upload the object. I'm now going to make this picture public. So here's a question for you. I came in here, I encrypted it, I made the object public. Is this object publicly accessible? Normally, if you say, I want to use server-side encryption, S3 takes care of the encryption at rest. If you go to retrieve it, S3 will decrypt it for you and provide it. It's a tricky one, says Jelly. Can you share exam tips? Yeah, well, if you want exam tips, then this time minus an hour and a half each week, we have the AWS Certification Quiz Show, CQ playlist, where I highly encourage you to watch some back episodes of our show. I'm producer on this show, but it's run by MJ. CQ. And we have lots and lots of shows with practice questions, and you get to answer questions along with an expert and try and test your knowledge of your AWS topics. So I encrypted this with a KMS key. If I click it, will it be publicly accessible? I did make it public. Will it be able to open? The answer is no. And the reason is this was encrypted with a specific KMS key and you need permission to access it. No need to generate a pre-signed URL. It's a bit more tricky than that. So let me just show you an in-between example. If I upload a picture here, and this one I encrypt it with the Amazon S3 master key. So this means S3 manages the encryption. And I make it public, then this will work. This is a typical teenager's room. I had a science book. This came from a science book where it was talking about entropy and natural states of order, how things in the universe revert to a natural state, and this is the natural state for a teenager's room according to that textbook, so I thought it was fun. So this particular picture was encrypted with server-side encryption with S3 managed key, you can see here, and S3 decrypted and provided, whereas the other picture that I uploaded, the Genius, was encrypted with a specific KMS key, and as an anonymous person, you do not have permission to access that key. So as an IAM user, I could access that key. So let's grab this key. Let's try it here. AWS, oops, I don't want to be there. AWS S3 copy 3 stack public Genius JPEG to my temp directory. This will work because I'm currently using one of the users that I ticked who has permission to use the KMS key. If I change that, so the key users on my Mac, I remove that as a key user. Then if I wait a moment and try and do that again, maybe because I'm an administrator as well, I'll just remove them all. So if I remove permission to use that key and I try and do it, then it's been cached. Why would S3 managed key work? So, damn it, still working. When you use server-side encryption in S3 with an Amazon managed key, Amazon, it's really, really interesting actually. There's some pretty diagram in the manual. I actually found the beginning of this manual to be the most fascinating read. So when you, here's a pretty picture. Here's a pretty picture. Let's start with the first picture. Okay, so here's something for you. So when you want to encrypt something, Amazon doesn't use one key to encrypt that data at all times. It's much safer to use a separate encryption key. Well, how does KMS key caching on the back end? You need to wait for the cache key to expire. Oh, thanks, Heat Killer. Where are you from? When you want to encrypt an object, you create a key just for that object, and you can call it generate key. So actually, let's try it from the command line here. AWS KMS. I want to generate a data key. And when you generate a data key, you give it which key you want to use. So let's try that. So key ID is equal to the KMS key that I created earlier. Yeah. You can provide an ARN. Specify the number of bytes or key spec. So key spec is which type of coding? Okay. key spec that thing. Before I do that, I want to give myself permissions again to use the key. Oh, let's pop back to S3 and see if my copy command still works. So don't know why that was. Will all make sense. Okay, so I go in here and I say, I want to key spec using my clipboard utility, paste that in. Okay, so it's now come back with things saying it's using that KMS key. Here is my secret that is being used to encrypt that file. So if you want to encrypt the file, use that plain text key to encrypt it. And if I pop back to the documentation page, what it's saying is it's using the key to generate a plain text data key, which can be used to encrypt, but it's also coming back with an encrypted data key. And that's this one here. And that is an encrypted version of the plain text. So I can then store my encrypted object together with this cipher blob, and it is perfectly safe. No one can access that data file. If you want to access the data file, you've got to decrypt this data blob by using this particular data key. And if you do it, it will decrypt it to this plain text, and then you can decrypt the file. So that's the basic idea of how things are protected using KMS. You never use one key to encrypt everything. You generate a data key, encrypt the file, and then store the encrypted data key next to it. And here you can see them storing the file, which is encrypted, together with that encrypted key. Don't forget to zero out the plain text before forgetting it. Better yet, use the client-side crypto library. It'll do it for you. So that's when keeping it in memory, isn't it? If you encrypt things and you have the key in memory, and people dump your memory to disk, it's dangerous. In fact, EC2 has the ability to do a hibernate where it captures all memory and saves the disk. It will only let you do that on encrypted EBS volumes, so people can't capture that in there. And if you want to decrypt, you provide the encrypted data key, which was that blob. It uses the key to decrypt it and give you the plain text key that you can then use to access it. We also have the ability to use public key, private key now in KMS as well. And S3 encryption KMS. There's a pretty picture in the S3 manual as well. And yeah, so it looks like that. So basically S3 or whatever stores the data. It takes the encrypted data key, uses a master key to decrypt it and get it. That's not a good one. Try this one. So S3 keeps your encrypted object and an encrypted data key. If you want to decrypt it, it takes the encrypted data key, passes it to KMS, decrypts it with the master key and passes it back, whatever. So the simple answer is S3 does it for you. So if you save in S3 and you use the S3 provided KMS key, then it will do all of that work for you. But if you use your own KMS key, then even if that object is marked public, people can't access it unless they have permission to use that KMS key. So I found that quite fascinating when I was doing my KMS stuff. And the other thing I found fascinating in KMS was there's a thing called an encryption context. And an encryption context is a set of keys that you pass to your function. And when you encrypt something, you can say, for example, the encryption context app name is this particular app. Envelope encryption is, yep, thanks, Mr. Bob. Envelope encryption is the data key encryption. This thing, the context, you can say the app name is example app, and you encrypt some data, and it will only let you decrypt if you say, when you decrypt, the app name is example app. You might go, well, if you can just provide it and you know what to provide, it's simple. The answer is you can limit people's IAM permissions as to what context name they can provide. So you could encrypt something with a particular context. You can give somebody permission only to decrypt things with a context of this particular application, which means they can only decrypt things which have been encrypted for that application. So even though the same key is being used for other encryption, you can limit the scope of what they're allowed to decrypt and all that, which is quite fascinating. So read the first page of the KMS manual. It's a lovely read. I should say the security exam is great if you're a generalist and you've used a lot of AWS services, you understand S3, EC2, VPCs, all these things, then the security exam is great because it's got a little bit of every service. And of course, you want to dive deep into things like KMS and HSM. So fun little exam. How are we going here? Encryption context is powerful. Note that the values are not secret. Think of them as identifiers and will be emitted to CloudTrail. Okay, so people can see it. It's not a secret. The whole intent is it's designed to limit who can use which context keys to limit the encryption. So fascinating stuff. I love learning about all these things can be done. Okay, any other fun things to talk about here? We've done that. Elasticsearch is not deleting even if a count's variable is 0. Now, I don't know a lot about Elasticsearch, but I'm one for spelling things correctly. So feel free to go and improve the quality of information on Stack Overflow. Does Elasticsearch have a capital S? Elastic is the name of the company. Elasticsearch has a lowercase s. So I shall not capitalize that S. I'm a stickler for formatting. By the way, if you're going to code things in here, there's a nice feature that you can tell it what sort of code you've got here. What language is this? Terraform. Okay, there isn't one for Terraform, but it looks, I don't know what it is. We can normally put things up here like Python. That gives a hint to the formatter to say what sort of code is being displayed in there. Ruby? Is that Ruby? Oh, in that case, come in here and say Ruby. Terraform Ruby. A Ruby wrapper. I don't know. That's good enough. Lang Ruby. Oh, talking about secrets. I have saved my secret key by encrypting it to a hash using Salt. How do I use this hash password to create Amazon S3 client? HCL? HCL is a language? You got me feeling guilty. Is that Haskell? What's HCL? HashiCorp configuration language. That makes sense then. Okay. I've saved my secret key by encrypting it to hash using Salt. How do I use this hash password to create an Amazon S3 client? So, several decades ago, I had my first job, and there was I think it was a Linux type, it wasn't Linux, it was before Linux, a Unix type system sitting on my desk that I got access to. And I could access the etc password file. And it's never a good idea to let's see, cat etc password. There are no passwords stored in here, thank goodness. But the etc password file on various Unix type systems store the passwords for people to log in. But it's not a good idea to store passwords in plain text because people can do it. So they're stored encrypted. And the problem with an encrypted password is if you know the encryption key, it's stored as a hash. And it's a one-way hash, so people cannot reverse the hash to get the password out. And the way the operating system works is when you go to log in, it takes the password you just typed in, passes it through the same hash, and compares the hash to the one that was saved. And if they match, it lets you into the system. The problem with that is if somebody knows the encryption method, they can write a dictionary program that goes through every word in the dictionary, combines them together, generates every hash output, and then it can just look in the password file to say, does it match that particular hash? And they can therefore reverse engineer the password just by looking up a dictionary of things. To make that harder, there's a concept called a salt. And a salt is sticking an extra couple of characters to the front or back of that encryption key, which then changes the encryption. And it means that every password you have, if it has a different salt, means it uses a different encryption key, and someone would have to do that dictionary attack separately for every single user, as opposed to creating a dictionary that can be attacked everywhere. So salts make different encryption, basically. So hashing passwords is fantastic, but what this person has done is they've hashed their secret key and stored it, and now they want to use it for the S3 client. You can't. You have to. Oh, you can. If you're using the AWS SDK, you have to provide your secret key, but it actually uses the hash in there using a thing called signature 4. Is signature 4 the latest, or is signature 4 an old one now? So signature 4 is a method of proving you have the secret key without sending the secret key to the other side. And if you are, the SDK does it for you automatically, but if you want to do it yourself, then you go through this whole process of signing something using a hash of the secret key. So you use your key to generate a hash on the something. So it does get involved, but I think they've got to have the full key to generate the signature. They can't use the hashed key to generate the signature after the fact. So that might be what they were thinking of doing there. In order to make these, just thought I'd mention that because salts and hashing and all that is quite fun. Does Lambda store last runtime? And Chris Williams, another great answer on here, has jumped in and provided an answer. Let's have a look what they're asking. I'm trying to pass a timestamp into API request as a parameter. I need to somehow store, this is interesting, somehow store the last time the AWS function has run into maybe an S3 bucket and also recover that. So if an S3, let's say you've got an S3 function that processes all data since the last time the Lambda function ran. So it needs to know the last time it ran. So how should Lambda store some information that it wants to get back again later? Now, if the Lambda container is reused, you could just store a global variable or environment variable, and it will be passed back to your function the next time you run. But if it's a long time later and the Lambda container is disposed of, Lambda reuse AWS doc, then that variable won't be around and you need to store it in persistent storage. So on that concept, container reuse, there is the ability, so a Lambda function can complete, no, that's not what I want. There's a thing called a freeze thaw cycle. I want a better documentation page, sorry, execution context. After a Lambda function is executed, Lambda maintains the execution context for some time in anticipation of another Lambda function invocation. In effect, the service freezes the execution context after Lambda function completes, thaws the context for reuse, if Lambda chooses to reuse the context and it's invoked again. The execution context reuse has the following implications. Objects declared outside of a function's handler method remain initialized. So if you create a global variable effectively, it will stay there for the next execution of the thing. Providing additional optimization when it's invoked again. For example, if your Lambda function establishes a database connection, instead of re-establishing the connection, the original connection is reused. We suggest adding logic to check if a connection exists. So you just say, does the variable have a non-null value? Then reuse it. The context provides 512 megabytes of disk space in /temp. If you don't delete from /temp, it might fill up. So let's say every time you execute, you store something in /temp in your Lambda function. Eventually it'll fill up. So when you quit your Lambda function, make sure you delete your temporary files. You may have heard that recently we've added the ability to attach EFS, Elastic File System Volumes, to your Lambda function, so you can now have more space, but only if you have a particular need. Background processes or callbacks initiated by your Lambda function that did not complete when the function ended resume if Lambda chooses to resume the context. You should make sure any background processes or callbacks are complete before your code exits. So it literally freezes and unfreezes later on. So Arturo is recommending storing in S3. Recall the destination allows both S3 gives time. So Lambda has a feature now called destinations, which is S3 a valid destination? That's an interesting concept. So we go to our exceptional function we created earlier. There's this concept called a destination where you can now automatically send the output. So instead of you having to call SNS or SQS, you can now say, I want to send it to somewhere. Now it looks like it only works for SNS, SQS, another Lambda function, or you can send a message on the event bus, which is effectively CloudWatch events. So good try. That won't work to send it to S3, but I like the idea of storing in S3. That person had as well. You can use EFS for Lambda, that's correct. So you could store the information on EFS, and that would definitely persist across executions of Lambda and even multiple Lambda environment contexts if they're in parallel. Somebody here is recommending Dynamodb. Chris here is suggesting you could look through like CloudWatch logs and have a look at the last time the Lambda executed. I will add another answer here because I love questions that have lots of answers. Quick database. Is parameter store. AWS parameter store. So AWS parameter store, AWS Systems Manager parameter store, allows you to store information as a parameter. So it might be a database URL or default settings. So when your application spins up, it grabs its default configuration from parameter store and then configures itself. Is AWS Systems Manager parameter store. And even the last execution time. So the nice thing about using parameter store is you don't have to create a database, you don't have to provision capacity. It's not fast. Parameter store pricing. There is something that has been added for guaranteed items, parameter store. Here we are. A standard parameter has no charge. That's the best thing. Or if you go for an advanced, it's 5 cents per parameter per month prorated hourly. What is an advanced? Advanced parameter store advanced. we introduce advanced parameters. You can create more than 10,000 parameters, use a larger parameter size. Oh, I thought it had a speed difference. Apparently it doesn't. So we just allow lots of them and bigger ones. By the way, do you notice this highlighting here? This highlighting comes from Google. And they introduced a thing recently where there's a new thing in the URL where they can say, make this bigger here for you, squiggly text thingy, and it highlights the beginning of the text to highlight. So here you can see advanced parameters enable, and then it says comma, certificates with long key. So it specified the first few words and the last few words, and the browser, or at least Chrome, I don't know if it's standard, now highlights the text that is on that page. What happens if we try that in a different browser, such as Safari? If I paste that into Safari, it does not highlight. So not every browser knows how to handle it, but that is a thing that Google does now with Chrome that will highlight that page. Oh, it looks like it disappeared as soon as I did something fancy to that page. Pretty neat, Mr. Google. Excellent. So it looks like I've been going for a couple of hours, so that's probably long enough to be grabbing your attention. So thank you very much for joining me on AWS on Stack Overflow today. Join me, yes, I'll be doing this again next week in 1 week minus 1 hour's time. In 1 week minus 2 hours time, we have the AWS certification quiz show where you can join us and vote and see if you can answer questions correctly on a pretend AWS quiz. And otherwise, I invite you to join our Stack Overflow room and have a bit of a chat with us and generally start answering things on Stack Overflow. So it's not that hard to get going on Stack Overflow. Just create an account, start by upvoting a few questions that have given you a nice bit of help. See if you can provide any answers to people out there. Don't worry if you get it wrong. Other people can come along and improve it. Worst case, you can always delete your answer. And otherwise, thank you very much for joining me today. And for my worldwide audience, some of you have probably gone to bed already. So cheers, and I'll see you again next week. See you later. Thanks, Jelly. Ooh, I like my message. Fantastic. Thanks, Arturo. Any questions before I go? Thanks, Mr. Bob in Seattle. See ya.